Tim Ferris has described journaling as the most cost-effective therapy he's found. And let's face it, Tim has probably tried everything out there. So today we're going to be talking about the benefits of journaling, why journaling is relevant to burnout, and most importantly, I'll give you 5 ways to get started with journaling. When I first started journaling, I was worried I was doing it wrong, and perhaps this is you too, but by the end of this episode, you will be confident in using journaling as a powerful tool to help you support your well-being.
It's nearly 10 years since my burnout experience, and I believe that it wasn't necessary for me to burn out, and it's not necessary for you either. In this podcast, my guests and I share our real-life experiences with burnout. We get into the science of stress and share actionable tips on how to prevent burnout and how to recover from it. I'm Holden, ex-management consultant and burnout survivor. I work with management consultants to help them avoid and overcome burnout. I help them to get intentional about their choices, rebuild their energy, and embed new healthy habits so that they can get back to loving life.
Let's start our conversation about journaling with a little inspiration for why we journal. A New York Times article about the benefits of journaling said, "There are the obvious benefits, like a boost in mindfulness, memory, and communication skills. But studies have also found that writing in a journal can lead to better sleep, a stronger immune system, more self-confidence, and a higher IQ. I've spoke to burnout survivors who believe that journaling really helped them on their journey to recovery, and I personally used it before, during, after, and I still use journaling now. I'm currently going through some hard times in my personal life at the moment, and that has sometimes led to me having to, or choosing to, compromise some of my usual daily habits. So yeah, some days I haven't done yoga, some days I haven't meditated, and some days, admittedly, I haven't journaled. But it's got me thinking about which of those habits I turn to the most in hard times, and it's journaling. And I think that journaling would be the last of all of those habits that I would be prepared to give up. If I had to give up something and only keep one, I think journaling would be the one that I would hang on to. And the reason for that is because it's the one that really helps me to understand my thoughts and my feelings, to really process them, really get my head around where I am mentally and emotionally. It also helps me clear my mind. It helps me by providing this safe space for me to discharge, especially when they're kind of out of proportion emotions, or when when it's a delicate situation and other people are impacted. And so it's useful to have an outlet for my emotions, so that when I'm engaging with other people, then I've discharged some of those strong emotions and I can be a bit more present for them. So it helps me to show up in the best way possible, even in the hardest of circumstances. So what is journaling? And here's a really simple, great definition of it. Journaling is a written record of our thoughts and feelings. And journaling, when I've done my research, I've found that sometimes it's referred to as expressive writing. And perhaps that's the term that resonates more with you than this kind of term journaling, which feels like it does need a definition. But yeah, I think that's really helpful. It's a written record of our thoughts and feelings. An article published by the American Psychological Association explained that you need to feel the related emotions to reap the positive benefits from the writing exercise. So I think that highlights that this isn't just a diary entry of events, it's an exploration of emotions. And to really explore our emotions, we need to feel free and we need to feel safe. So we don't journal to create an output. It's not about what we end up with on the page at the end of our journaling session. It's about the process that we go through and the effect that it has on our mental state and well-being. What you put in your journal entries is entirely up to you, and what you do with your journal entries is entirely up to you. So if you want to share them with somebody, then of course you can. But for most of us, our journal entries are just for us, and it's about the process of journaling more than the output that you get from journaling. And so for most people, the things that we journal about are no more public than the thoughts that are in our heads. And here's the complete quote from Tim Ferris on journaling. "I don't journal to be productive. I don't do it to find great ideas or to put down prose that I can later publish. The pages aren't intended for anyone but me. It's the most cost-effective therapy I've ever found. And I think that's a really helpful description of it. It's not about being productive. It's not about creating beautiful prose. It's not about something that we can do something with. It's about the process. It's about the therapy that we received. Now, my most common journal entries combine an exploration of the specifics. So I'll write about the facts, the events of the day, or the sequence of events of a situation that's affecting me. And from there, I'll go on to explore my emotions associated with those things, with those conversations. Sometimes I'm journaling just to discharge my thoughts and feelings onto the page so that I have this private avenue to release. But sometimes I'm trying to really understand what's going on. And in particular, I'll do that if my emotional response to a situation seems kind of off key, like not quite right, or if it feels disproportionate to the event. So if I look at the facts of the event, it's not that big a deal, but emotionally I feel quite wound up about it and it keeps kind of coming up again and again for me, maybe over a number of days, and there's something else going on there. There's something else that's been triggered. What's most likely to have happened there is that my subconscious has gone and linked today's event with a past event, which was much more painful, and I'm actually responding still to that past event. But it's very difficult for us to see that because not all of the information is available to us in our conscious mind. Some of that's going on with our subconscious. And I find that journaling gives me a bit more access to that bigger picture, a bit more access to the stuff that's in my subconscious. And when I get a little bit more access to that, things begin to fall into place and it begins to make a bit more sense. William Wordsworth wrote that we should fill your paper with the breathings of your heart. I love that quote. It captures that journaling is not just about our logical mind. It's not about just plugging into all of the stuff that we've already got available to us in our conscious mind. It's about our feelings. It's about our sensations, the breathings of the heart. But also, I'd like to add the subconscious mind and the breathings and the activity of the subconscious mind that we don't normally have an awareness of. So it gives us that greater awareness of the subconscious mind or of the breathings of our hearts. Now I want to walk you through 5 methods of journaling, and that is not to say that there are only 5 ways to journal. Not at all. There are probably hundreds. In fact, I've got a book called 49 Ways to Write Yourself Well, and it includes how you can process forgiveness by writing, how you can understand other people's perspective, how you can kind of step into their shoes, different ways you can write to allow you to kind of explore those experiences. There's a section on how you can reset your money mindset using writing. I'll give you the details of the book in the show notes in case you're interested in that. But suffice to say, there are many ways we can use writing as a tool to support our well-being. But I think for the sake of today's episode, let's start with 5. And I've chosen 5 ways that I've found to be really effective. And if you enjoy this episode and exploring journaling, then let me know, because maybe we should have another episode on journaling and we could bring in an expert for a deeper dive into other ways that we can use journaling. So now I'm going to walk you through those 5 ways. And I'm going to start with the one that I use the most, which is just non-stop writing. And this is great to really get underneath how I'm feeling. If you're starting out with this, I would suggest that you set a timer. It doesn't have to be loads of time, like even 3 minutes is a good start. Maybe you want to explore a bit further. Maybe you allow yourself 5 minutes. And when I say non-stop, I mean non-stop. So if there is a pause, then just write something. So I don't know what to write next. Something's going to come soon. Hannah told me I had to just keep writing until something else flows. And you just write some nonsense until you get back into the flow. Now, the reason that we do that, rather than taking a pause and see what we can think of to start writing again, is because we want to avoid bringing that logical brain back online. So if we pause and start thinking, that's our logical mind beginning to go, okay, maybe we should talk about this or that. And it doesn't give us that access to the subconscious mind I was talking about. But if we continue to write, something will come and it will flow. And that's it, by doing that you're more likely to get access to that information that isn't necessarily always available to you. Unlike that logical brain, which you can access anytime, any day. Don't correct anything. So this is not about writing a masterpiece. Bad handwriting, bad spelling, poor grammar, a random order of thoughts, a lack of flow in the content is all good. Sometimes my diary entries are completely illegible, and that's fine because, like we said before, this isn't about the output. This isn't about the thing that you're creating. It's about the process that you go through. So don't edit any of this as you go along. This is just trying to get into a flow and continuously write. Should you wish to reorganize some of that later or edit some of that, should you wish to write a blog article that's based on some of that, go for that. But the act of journaling is about processing your thoughts and feelings. So yeah, don't edit while you go along. So that's non-stop writing. And as I said before, mine usually follow a structure of things that happened and emotions, but I will go back and forth, and especially when I'm non-stop writing, it can be very random. The second one is the brain dump. And I think this is particularly useful when you're feeling overwhelmed or when your mind is kind of on a loop. And your mind keeps going, oh, and this, oh, and that, and we've got to do this, and then there's this other thing that's worrying me. And sometimes it feels kind of that there are so many things spinning round, and you don't even know what it is you're worried about. That, yeah, you're busy, but there might be something underneath all of that that's worrying you. So I find that using a brain dump really helps to get everything out, and then you're kind of like, okay, now I can begin to put things into perspective. Now I can begin to prioritize stuff. And sometimes there will be things that end up on that list that I wasn't aware of, that they were bugging me. Maybe these are things that are way off in the future. Maybe it's a text from a friend from a few days ago, and I'm thinking I should probably follow up with her, but it wasn't significant enough to be on my conscious to-do list. But when I do this complete brain dump, then it really helps to get it all down and then get perspective and be able to prioritize and so on. And again, like, how the mind works is that by consciously thinking about it, writing about it, putting it on a piece of paper, your brain doesn't feel like it needs to keep reminding you, and this, and this, and that, and the other. And so it brings some peace where you may have been feeling like your brain is on this constant loop and you can't really relax. And so how would you do this? You just write everything and anything that comes up. If you find that using a mind map style format helps, go for that. It might just be a long list, or it may be continuous prose. And it can be a mixture. You don't have to constrain yourself when you're journaling. It can just flow. Just do what works for you. You might want to do it in one session. You might feel that you need to go back to it and keep adding to it over time. And now this is the type of journaling that I do in the middle of the night when my mind is looping through things. And so sometimes I will write just one or two words on a topic, and that's enough of an item for me to know I want to do that tomorrow. I need to do that tomorrow. And sometimes I will write pages and pages, and sometimes it will be like I'll draft an entire email, or I'll come up with the idea for a presentation, and I'll be, like mapping out the story of a presentation with the different slides that I want to include. So yeah, sometimes it will be very detailed, and sometimes it will just be like one word of I need to do this tomorrow. And when I'm doing this in the middle of the night as a brain dump to help me sleep, then what will normally happen is there'll be a bunch of stuff that comes out very easily, and I'll write all about that, and then I'll turn the light off and something else will pop up. And so what I'll do is add to that list. And then I'll try and go back to sleep. And then something else will come up and I will add to the list. And I'll keep doing that until I'm at peace and I can go back to sleep. And so a couple of tips if you want to add this kind of nighttime journaling. This isn't something that I'm recommending. I'm just saying if you struggle with an active mind when you're trying to sleep, then use this. I'm not suggesting set an alarm in the middle of the night to do this. But I have a head torch next to the bed. It's got a red light on, so I'm able to do all of this without exposing myself to any blue or green light and waking myself up even more. And of course, a pen and a paper next to the bed is always handy. It's not ideal if you then find yourself wandering through the house looking for those, when ideally you'd be fast asleep. So those are a couple of practical tips. And yes, the brain dump I think is great when you're feeling overwhelmed and you feel like you don't even know the full list of things you need to worry about or how to prioritize, and it all just feels too much. It's a great tool to use. You can start by just randomly dumping it all down, and then you may feel that you then want to order it into a list of priorities, or these are the things I'm going to do today and these are the things I'm going to do later in the week. It's up to you how you work through it afterwards. But yeah, initially it's just about getting it all down on paper so your brain feels like it can chill out and stop telling you, oh, we need to worry about this, we need to worry about this. So that was the second one. The third one is prompt-based journaling. So this is where you get a prompt from somewhere or someone, and then you journal on that topic. And I find this really interesting. So sometimes I go to these yoga classes where at the end we're given some journaling prompts to take home. And I find it interesting because the prompts are usually things that I wouldn't have thought about otherwise, which means that I'm exploring topics that are kind of in my blind spots. They're often things like, how could you do this better for yourself? How could you find more peace in your life? How could you, in fact, I'm just reaching for one now. So what does a healthy relationship look or feel like to you? How can you have gratitude for difficult times or for relationships in your life, and so on. So I find that very interesting to work with these prompts from other people, because it just gives me a different perspective on life, and I find myself exploring things I wouldn't have otherwise. But I also think that it's worth including on my list for today, because it's a great place to start if you're not sure how to start journaling. So if somebody else is giving you a topic, it kind of constrains your thinking. If you're like, oh my gosh, I've got this blank page, what on earth am I going to put on it? And there are so many things in the world and so many things on your mind that you don't know where to start. It can be helpful to be guided by some prompts. And if this is you, then I've created a download with 7 days worth of journaling prompts, and it includes hints and tips on how you journal, like the rules for journaling, and 7 days worth of prompts to explore how stress impacts your life, how you respond to stress, and how you can better support your well-being. So if you're interested in that, it's available at hannahholden.co.uk/journal. I'll include the link in the show notes, of course. So that's prompt-based journaling. And number 4 is lessons learned. So any of you listening who are project managers will be very familiar with the concept of lessons learned. What it is to reflect upon something that you've done. And I find this really helpful to learn when I'm trying out new things. So my best example is when I started teaching yoga classes, or I'll even do it now if I teach something like a new technique that I haven't taught to students before, and I'll reflect on how it went and how they experienced it. And so again, when I'm doing a lessons learned kind of journal entry, then I'll start by explaining the facts, and then I'll describe what I enjoyed, what feedback I received, how I felt about it, where I felt challenged, where I felt I could have done things differently, what I'd like to do better next time. And I think it's just a really great tool to learn and grow, rather than just go into new experiences and then you're at risk of kind of relearning the same thing over again, to being taught the same lesson over and over again. I find it really helpful as part of the learning process to reflect on how something went. So that one's one that I fairly frequently do, but I think it in particular for when I've tried new things. And the 5th style of journaling that I wanted to talk about today is writing a letter. And this is a great option for where you want to clear the air with somebody when a conversation isn't an option. And so the conversation might not be an option because you've decided that this person is too volatile and it's too risky, you can't have that conversation. Or perhaps you're not in contact with them anymore, or perhaps, this is somebody who is no longer of this world, but you still have something that you need to clear up with them. I know that in the past I've written to people who've passed away. I've written to my child self. I've written to my future self. I've written to myself as if I am my best friend, giving myself advice. So you can use the letter in so many different ways. It doesn't just have to be about you writing to somebody. There are different angles that you can take on this. I won't explain to you how you write a letter because I'm sure you already know. There would obviously be a greeting, and then the letter would contain whatever it is that you want to say to that person. And the letter is not intended to be sent to them. So you can be as honest and as frank as you want to be. And the intention of this letter is to give you a place to process your feelings. And you might be processing grief or anger or regret or whatever is going on for you. It gives you this safe space for you to be able to discharge all of those feelings onto paper, and then you can do what you like with it. You can set fire to it. If you should you wish to, you can share it with that person at some point. But that's not what this is about. This is about you having an avenue to process those feelings. And even if that letter is never received by that person, there is a kind of cathartic experience with writing the letter, just writing it, even though it never gets sent. So those are the 5 ways that I wanted to share with you. Now, while I use journaling to process difficult situations and emotions, I also use it to turn things around. And so to do that, I include gratitude and affirmations. So affirmations are positive statements in the present tense about what I want to create in my life, how I want things to be different. And gratitude, we covered in episode 4 of the podcast with Anna Stando. But when it comes to including it in my journal, I might explore a topic that's frustrating me, but then also to add a sprinkling of gratitude, I'll start looking at, what am I learning from this situation? How am I benefiting from it? What changes am I going to make as a consequence of this, which will make my life better? And so how can I kind of appreciate and take, where's the silver lining? Because I'm pretty sure that there's a silver lining in everything. And so how can we find that? And on this note, I found an article written by some researchers from Pennsylvania State University. They stated that in some cases, being diagnosed with a physical disease has caused stress for patients, and it can result in those patients then going on to develop depression or anxiety over that diagnosis and the implications of that diagnosis. Within their article, they reviewed the array of existing research on the effect of journaling on patients in these kinds of situations. And they say that several studies have found clinical benefits tied to expressive writing in patients with autoimmune and inflammatory conditions such as arthritic conditions, lupus and asthma, fibromyalgia, irritable bowel syndrome, and HIV or AIDS. In addition, expressive writing has been found to have beneficial effects on blood pressure and on several health-relevant outcomes following the experience of a heart attack, such as reduced numbers of medical appointments and prescription medications, increased self-care behaviours, improved cardiac symptoms, and improved health-related quality of life. Expressive writing has also been associated with small but consistent improvements to well-being among diverse cancer groups, especially breast, renal, and prostate cancer groups. And finally, a relatively small study of 40 people diagnosed with major depressive disorder found that those writing about their deepest thoughts and feelings related to emotional events had significant reductions in depression immediately after writing and over a month thereafter. In their study, these researchers looked at the impact that positive affect journaling had on patients who had various medical conditions and elevated anxiety symptoms associated with that diagnosis. These participants practiced positive affect journaling for 15 minutes 3 times a week. And positive affect journaling is very much like gratitude journaling. So they were given prompts like, what are you thankful for? What did somebody else do to help you? And so these participants were practicing and journaling on those topics, on those prompts for 15 minutes 3 times a week. And what they found was that this style of journaling could serve as an effective intervention for mitigating mental distress, increasing well-being, and enhancing physical functioning among these medical populations. And they suggest that this style of journaling could be integrated into routine medical care to improve quality of life. So this positive affect journaling is a type of prompt-based journaling, and it's basically a written form of practicing gratitude. And like I said, I love to weave gratitude into my journal writing. So once I've explored all of the kind of the difficult stuff, then I try to find that positive spin, that silver lining on it. And I also mentioned earlier that created this free download with 7 days of journal prompts, and many of those prompts are this kind of positive effect journaling. And like I mentioned before, there's also the episode on gratitude that you might like to go back to. That's episode 4. Before I finish, let's just quickly recap. So the 5 methods of journaling that I just ran through were, the first one was non-stop writing. The second one was the brain dump, especially if you're experiencing overwhelm or an overactive mind. The third was prompt-based journaling. The fourth was lessons learned, reflection on an experience that you've had. And the fifth was letter writing. And the rules for journaling are that you need to explore your thoughts and emotions. You need to explore your emotions to be getting the benefit. And if you're really going to explore your emotions, you need to feel free and you need to feel safe. And you need to be able to explore the good, the bad, and the ugly. So going into emotions like shame or guilt and other really uncomfortable emotions, it needs to be a safe space for you to be able to discharge these. This is exactly what journaling is for. And so make sure that you feel that level of freedom and safety when you're journaling. And if that means you need to burn whatever you've written afterwards, then go ahead and do that. But journaling is really, it's for you. It's the process. It provides you with the ability to discharge all of that and process all of that. It's not about creating something. It's about your mental well-being. So the other rule was, don't worry about spellings and grammar, and don't edit this. This is about the process. I'd like to close today's episode with one final quote, and this time it's from one of the most famous diary writers of all time, someone who navigated huge adversities and who can really speak to the power of journaling, Anne Frank. She said, "I can shake off everything as I write. My sorrows disappear. My courage is reborn." And that is the power of journaling. My sorrows disappear. My courage is reborn. So until next time, happy journaling, and may your sorrows disappear and your courage be reborn.
These podcasts are here to help you manage your stress and burnout, and your feedback is really valuable. So please rate this podcast and also drop me a note with any questions, suggestions, or feedback that you might have. One of the most common questions I get asked is, where should I start? And I believe that the best place for you to start is to learn how to soothe your nervous system. I've created a free download with instructions for 5 different ways that you can do just this, and all of them work pretty much instantly. It's called the Essential Toolkit for Management Consultants. You can download it now at www.hannahholden.co.uk/essential. One last thing, it's the legal language. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of your doctor, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional.